What's up, YouTube? Today, we're going to talk about the Afghanicus leopard gecko. Selling in the billions each year, Rainbow Mealworms is your one-stop shop for all your insect needs. Their quality feeders and A+ customer service keep me coming back to support the health and growth of all of our animals. Visit them today at rainbowmealworms.net to place your order. Now, amongst more experienced breeders, the Afghanicus leopard gecko is actually fairly common, but you're probably not going to see it very much in pet stores, or you're not going to see them in vast quantities at pet shows, and so the knowledge of these guys can be lost a little bit. Where did the Afghanicus come from? There are quite a few species and subspecies of leopard geckos. They all derive from the Middle East/Asia continents, and for the most part they all have slightly different features that accentuate their species or subspecies classification. The Afghanicus leopard gecko, as its name states, is found in Afghanistan. It has some telltale signs and features that I want to point out to you today. The first feature is this stark yellow color. Most regular species of leopard geckos have kind of a duller yellow color or a slightly lighter saturation of yellow color. The Afghanicus species, however, has a very rich yellow coloration. It's just a pure yellow, the definition of yellow. The next feature that you might notice is that it's very dark complected. And what I mean by that is it has lots of clusters of very dark and very black pigment. The scientific name for these guys is Eublepharis macularis afghanicus. There are a lot of people that might argue that this should actually be classified as a separate species instead of a subspecies. Right now, it's classified as a subspecies of leopard gecko. They often have very wonky patterns on the top of their head because of their very blotched appearance. And one other thing I noticed about them, a lot of them, if not 90% of the ones that I've seen, have kind of a stubby tail. You can see the very end of their tail is just not quite as pointed as a normal leopard gecko's tail. A normal leopard gecko's tail kind of filters evenly down to a tip, and these guys, at least from what I'm noticing, it's blunted a little bit. And the last feature that I want to mention is size. They typically are a little bit smaller than your natural leopard gecko. However, arguably not that small, because size is still a variable factor. I have smaller Afghanicuses, I have bigger Afghanicuses. This is a female that was in production for us this year. Let's grab a male for reference. I love showing different animals for reference. This is a male, and as you can see, Natural Variance has deemed this guy to have a lighter coloration than his female counterpart here. But in general, you're going to see a darker yellow coloration with the Afghanicus, but he still has that same blotched appearance. He still has the very nice, unique head pattern that the Afghanicuses have. And so a lot of people ask, where did Bold come from? Where did Halloween Mask come from? Where did these very dark pigmented leopard gecko morphs that we have today in the hobby come from? One strong theory, I believe, is the Afghanicus blood. Because Afghanicus is labeled as a subspecies, or even if it was classified as a separate species, it's been proven to be interbreedable with the current Macularis popular species in the hobby. There's another great shot of his unique head pattern. That exact head pattern is exactly what Halloween masks look like. It's just a wonky pattern on the head that gives it kind of a mask-like appearance. Unfortunately, my favorite Afghanicus died this year during breeding season. It had a sea turtle on the top of its head. It was so cool. So anyway, the way you could get bold stripe from these guys is little by little, if the black pigments start to align in bold stripe markings, you just start pairing those guys together, and eventually years down the line, you're going to get very striped animals. Now, bold striped leopard geckos do tend to be smaller. They have dark pigment, and they tend to be very bright yellow. And when you look at these guys, again, what did I say about their yellow? Very saturated yellow. I think there's a lot of evidence to support, just looking from these guys, that bold stripe, Halloween mask, bold spot, bold pattern geckos had their beginnings in the Afghanicus leopard gecko. Now, how easy is it to breed the Afghanicus leopard gecko to the normal leopard gecko? This is something that I'm still experimenting with and finding out myself. This year, we had 5 or 6 females breed to a perfectly normal sized and healthy black knight male. A black knight male is Macularis macularis. The Afghanicus are Macularis afghanicus. In theory, they should breed perfectly fine, and they have bred perfectly fine in the past. But what we experienced this year between the Afghanicus and the Turkmenicus, and between the Afghanicus and the Macularis, both of those pairings we tried, we received 100% infertility. And the 2 or 3 eggs that actually did make it full term, the babies came out like they popped out of their egg and then died instantly. As of right now, it appears that there are some DNA issues between the Afghanicus macularis and the Macularis macularis. That's just from my experience, but obviously it's possible because we've gotten a lot of Afghanicus blood into the Macularis macularis blood. But it's just one of those odds things, right? If you have 100 Afghanicus and regular Macularis pairings and only 10 babies hatch out, well, good for you. Those 10 hatched out. Now those 10, in theory, should be easier to breed back to the Macularis macularis, and now that bloodline keeps going. I would love to see numbers like that, and we're going to be recording numbers like that for the hobby so that we can see the fertility rates of these guys. So anyway, somebody else besides me might have had a different experience, but that was my experience in year 1. Year 2, we're going to be attempting crossbreeding once again. Now, one thing I should note that's really interesting, we work with 4 species of leopard geckos here. The regular Macularis, the Afghanicus, the Turkmenicus, and the fasciolatus. And between all of those species, I've actually noticed different screams. So if you know anything about leopard geckos, they're one of the few lizard species in the world that actually have vocal cords. That's why when you pick them up sometimes you could hear them like scream a little bit or like chirp a little bit at you. Pardon my poor representation of a leopard gecko scream. And it's usually when you're like handling them like this, or like you pick them up. He's not doing it now, but he was just doing it a second ago. They chirp a little bit. They use their vocal cords to vibrate, and it creates a tone, a resonance that you can actually hear. I've noticed that the fasciolatus resonance is the highest pitch resonance out of all the leopard geckos. The Turkmenicus is higher than the Macularis, but the Macularis and the Afghanicus have a lower pitch vibration tone. So take that for what it's worth. I just thought it was a cool feature to talk about. Again, let's just take a second to look at the beauty of these animals. They're very exotic looking, very beautiful looking. We have lots of plans to continue trying to breed these back into Black Knight. Also breeding white and yellow into this, fasciolatus into this. Almost any morph can be bred into this and should create some really cool pattern diversity and color. Now also take this for what it's worth, but the Turkmenicus and the fasciolatus leopard geckos are much more likely to poop on you than the Afghanicus. These guys been chirping at me a little bit and buzzing at me to put them down, but they haven't pooped on me yet. But I've noticed with the Turkmenicus and the fasciolatus, they'll just shoot right out at you. Again, leopard geckos are not on scientists' top priority for classification purposes. So if these guys were to be reclassified, there's a really good chance that they might reclassify them as a different species. One more thing that I want to point out, care requirements are exactly the same for these guys as the regular Macularis macularis leopard geckos. So don't you worry. If you want to get into Afghanicus and start experimenting with some projects, go right ahead. 90 to 95 degree hotspot, humid hide, fresh food and water on a weekly or every week and a half basis, and you're going to be good to go. Well, thank you so much for sticking with me through this whole video, guys. What did you think? Did you like this morph review video about the Afghanicus leopard gecko? Would you like to see more reviews about the other wild types of leopard geckos or morphs in leopard geckos? Please let me know in a comment below what morphs or what leopard geckos you would like for us to review, and we are going to do that. So until next time, stay safe, be responsible. I'll see you in the next video, and have a geeky gecko great day.